The one thing I do think, and I said you have an advantage of, is when you're a chief executive, unlike a legislator, you either own that office or that office owns you. There have been people who have been mayor that look like they filled the office and they control it. There's other people where the office looks like it's running them, and then the people kind of give up on them. You have a big enough personality and a big enough presence, you look like you own that office. You now need to get people across the cabinet and in your central office that allow you to keep that kind of not only profile, but the sense of being in front.
Ambassador Rahm Emanuel, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. It is lovely to see you today. Welcome to News Not Noise.
That's a great headline.
That's what I call my brand, News Not
Yeah.
Noise. We give you the information, not a panic attack.
Well, sometimes the news will give you a panic attack.
This is the problem lately. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm encountering that sadly. You get it. A big day for Democrats. You must be feeling good today. We've seen Democrats win from coast to coast, make important gains with key voting blocks. What are your key takeaways this morning?
Well, first of all, while you say it is key for Democrats, but I actually think the election says more about the Republicans than Democrats. On the Democratic side, the good news is, unlike 2024, we learned not to do a set of issues that make us look totally isolated and distant and not relevant to the American people, and focused on cost of living issues that they're facing every day, which not only are we talking about those issues, it means that we understand their pressures. But when you look at the breadth and depth of this election, it was a 100% USDA top choice repudiation of Donald Trump and the Republicans. From New Jersey, Virginia, the Georgia Power Utility Commission, two positions that we won statewide that we haven't had in over 20 years. Pennsylvania's three Supreme Court plus the sheriff, I think it's Bucks County. You look at the Mississippi State Senate race, and you look at in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, the socialists lost and they retained their majority in the state senate. And then you look at California. Across every place there was a mayoral election or a local election, Democrats won in places they have not won. It was a repudiation of Donald Trump. Energy among Democratic turnout, independents breaking forward Democrats, and a modulated Republican turnout. So it is good news for Democrats because 2026 will be a referendum on the Republicans, and we now know half the verdict because it's in.
So, for folks who don't know this, before you were ambassador to Japan, mayor of Chicago, chief of staff to Obama, you were a member of Congress and you ran the DCCC, the entity that helps Democrats get elected. You flipped the House. So, would you put on your DCCC hat this morning and look at what we saw last night? We saw Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill run campaigns tying economic anxiety to Donald Trump. But then you saw Mamdani run on a promise of essentially blowing up the system metaphorically to change reality for working Americans. As the DCCC head, which message would you say resonates for Democrats in
Well,
26?
look, I mean, first of all three talked about affordability, cost of living. Their prescriptions for solving it are not the same. But you say that, he says blow up the up. The guy in Minneapolis who was a socialist running against I think he's a four-term incumbent, lost. Okay, so I'm not so sure, no disrespect to Manhattan, Park Slope, Brooklyn. That's not where the country's going. It was significant from a tactical standpoint, a communication standpoint, but from a national election and winning in a national environment, you're going to learn more from what Governor Abigail Spanberg did and what Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill did, both about my principal view that candidates, their profile, their background matter. They were able to start communicating with a group of voters that usually put Democrats on mute button because of their profile. Now, then you look at Georgia, then you look at what's like the Army guy that won the sheriff's race in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia suburb. And I'm saying, which is Jessica, given how long we go back in my record, recruiting people that have a story that opens up a new element of the electorate
Mm.
is important. The other thing I would say, and lastly, and then I'll shut up because I know you want to get a word in edgewise. They try to run the cultural issues against Abigail. Her background as a CIA agent, etc., doesn't fly. On the other hand, it worked against a San Francisco politician like Kamala Harris because it fit the profile. That also tells you how you can both deflect and win on a set of cultural issues that are important.
Would you ground that in some specifics? Because what I hear you saying is it's sort of the person's identity, Spanberger being sort of a national security female, right? Like a
Well, so
centrist,
is Mikey.
badass woman, right? Go ahead.
Well, so is Mikey in New Jersey. I think that's a piece of it. Now, there isn't. Democrats love to do this. It's TikTok. No, you got to have the whole thing work. And so, in their cases, and I think this is also important, Abigail in Virginia followed history, meaning the party out of power to the president wins.
Right.
Mikey in New Jersey made history because you have to go back to the 60s and Governor Hughes to see one party in 3 elections win in a row. But in both cases, they come out of the national security pool of identity, and brings a comfort level to independent, unaffiliated swing voters who may never in the past have looked at a Democrat, took a second look at both of them and said, okay, that's somebody I can trust. And they're running for chief executive. They're not running for representative. They're running for an office where you have to trust the person's judgment.
So you're essentially making a case for Democrats to run as pocketbook centrists and folks that independents can feel safe with. But there's also a part of running in a primary that requires energizing a base. And just to be realistic, if you look at Mondani as the potential part of the future of the Democratic Party, his voters don't want moderation. And I know that you say that they're Park Slope people, but there are young progressives across the country. And what they want is a wrecking ball with receipts. So my question is really, if Democrats continue to do the playbook of running a little to the left and then back to the center, do they risk looking like the
Well,
party of your dad's group chat when what young people want is something louder,
Jessica,
younger?
Jessica,
Yes.
Mikey won a 6-person primary. There was the mayor of Newark. Hold, wait a second. There was the mayor of Jersey City. There was the president of the teachers union. She won a 6-person primary. So, is there a place where the energy that was brought into Mondani's campaign or that he tapped into valid and important? 100%. But you can't ignore that when you're giving me your analysis. I just gave you a New Jersey primary. 800,000 people showed up. You can't tell me it's not reflective. And in a 6-person race where you had all the versions of that you can want from the mayor of Newark to her, she wins. Abigail's so strong, nobody, quote unquote, from the progressive left challenges her. In the congressional seat to replace Jerry Connolly, there was 11 people that won. One candidate gets 59% of the vote out of 11, and he's the most moderate conservative. I don't believe, well, I appreciate you trying to put it within an ideological prism. I think it's actually what I was describing was more a stylistic temperament than it was an ideological analysis. That's what I was trying to tell you.
So on the substance, is it your prescription that Democrats should just drop the talk of cultural issues, whether it's transgender stuff, DEI, even the use of the word authoritarian or democracy is under
Well,
threat?
I think whether it was defund the police, making schools a cultural war zone, or using terms like Latinx, a whole host of issues that rather than bring voters, actually subtracted voters. Now, the one thing I know about politics, it's the art of addition, not subtraction. And we mastered subtraction. And we
In the
used,
past.
and we used a set of terms and a set of policies that made us feel good about ourselves but told people we don't know anything about them. I mean, there's a whole host of examples I can give. Take the Hispanic community. We talk about we use a term like Latinx.
Some people do.
I,
Yeah.
well, no, no, Jessica. Leaders in the party did.
Right.
And then the Hispanic community said, who are you talking to? The other thing, if you've done urban politics like I have, there is no black brown coalition. Hispanic voters were immigrants just like your relatives, my relatives, Italians and Irish. They're just the Italian, Irish, and Jews of this century. But we wanted to describe them as the downtrodden people of color. We made ourselves, which is why we lost ground with Hispanic voters. Now, Donald Trump's abused it, and Hispanic voters went back to voting Democrat because of his abuse, not because we showed anything of change. Now, as somebody that represented a significant Hispanic community in the city of Chicago, about owning a home, safe streets, good schools, getting your kids on their way for the American dream. That's what that was about. But we approached everybody from our vantage point, our economic socio background, saying this is who you are, and not rather than saying we get you, it said you don't even know who we are. I defund the police. I've always said that is a dumb idea, only to be matched in its stupidity by sending in the National Guard as if that's a safety program.
Right.
And again, it actually didn't bring us any closer. I mean, by way of example, if you want to use this, the now mayor-elect of New York once talked about defunding the police. When he ran for mayor of a bigger city than his state Senate district, never mentioned it.
In fact, in his victory speech, he said he's going to work hand in hand with the police.
Yeah, well, for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, once you get out of a little section of Queens, you all of a sudden realize big
You
city
need the
with a
police.
lot of different. Yeah. Okay, so yes, we identified a set of cultural issues that we thought were important, and the American people thought we looked like we came from Mars.
Let me ask you one Mandani specific question and then we'll move
Yeah.
on. He is polarizing for sure. He's also an exceptional political talent. And as somebody who's run a city, I wonder if you'd give us your sense of your biggest hope for him, your biggest fear, and what advice you'd give him as he looks to govern it.
Well, he and I met, so at his request or his staff's request, talking about being a mayor, etc. And unless you're a mayor, nobody else has sat in that hot seat of all the twos and fros of that job. So, one thing I told him, look, 4 years is a very short time. It took me 8 years to transform Chicago public schools to what Sean Ritter and Stanford called the single best large public school system out of the top 100. I said, you got to pick an A. It could be a grocery store. It could be free buses. I happen to think your daycare is an A, but you got to decide what an A is. Because it's going to take you all 4 years to get to the starting line on that idea. It took me all 8 years to get to universal pre-K. It took, I can run down the whole list, and I did first city to do free community college. We started it in 2014, or announced it in 2014. First class was 2017. This 4 years is going to go like a flash.
Right.
Two, you got to figure out not only what's an A, how do you represent the whole city, where they feel welcomed even if they weren't part of your winning coalition. And the one thing I do think, and I said you have an advantage of, is when you're a chief executive, unlike a legislator, you either own that office or that office owns you. There have been people who have been mayor that look like they filled the office and they control it. There's other people where the office looks like it's running them. And then the people kind of give up on them. You have a big enough personality and a big enough presence, you look like you own that office. You now need to get people across the cabinet and in your central office that allow you to keep that kind of not only profile, but the sense of being in front. The second thing is your mayor, pick up the garbage, trim the trees, fix the lights, get the potholes done. Nobody wants your view on foreign policy if their neighborhood services are not done.
Right.
So figure out, get in front of there, make sure you're on top of it, You know what's going on. And if you do those things, people will be interested in what you have to say on other subjects. But if you don't do those things, they're going to hit that mute button very quick.
It's the tactical everyday stuff that really moves the
Look,
needle.
I mean, you think about you, where you live, your neighborhood, you know. I mean, I told them this one example. We had a paradigm and a model system on neighborhood services from, from once the request was put in, there was 4 working days until we had to service it. We try to get the system from tree trimming, rodent control, graffiti removal, street lights, 4 days. And we established a grid system and a blitz system. And we had every request in, and we would go through 4 wards out of the 50 every weekend. Treat all the tree trimmings, all the street lights, all the graffiti, etc., blitzing it so people saw not just a light, but everything from night to
Smart.
day.
Get
And I
stuff done.
said, yeah, and they saw you, and you need to be in front of that, leading that, so they know you get it.
Okay, I want to shift back to 26 for a minute and go looking ahead. Quickly on this. This cycle, Trump wasn't on the campaign trail, and today, in his way, he said that's partly why that's why Republicans lost. If you look ahead to
What a
26,
shocking interpretation of him, by
I
him,
mean,
of him.
no one's surprised there. Do
Uh-huh.
you think that Trump on the trail in 26 actually could help Republicans counterintuitively? Or do you think the results, especially with Chitterelli, makes a lot of Republican candidates take even more distance in 26?
I will raise some money so he can go on the road.
Okay, that's a good answer. We can move on.
Okay?
I want,
I
yeah,
don't want him to stay and do a rose garden. There is no more rose garden.
I
I'll
know.
pay for your travel schedule. You want
If
to go
we
hit the road, Mr. President? Make my day.
if we get there time wise, I want to ask you about the Rose Garden. But I first want to talk about 2028. You have said that you're evaluating a run in 28.
Yeah.
My question is essentially, is there still a lane in our current environment for a centrist Jewish man in a party where the loudest litmus tests are, as you say, about identity, language, and where you stand on Israel?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with you. That's where the litmus test is. And I don't think it's loud, but I don't think it represents a lot of people. Number two, you've left out. I think there's a lane for candor, authenticity, and strength. Nobody's ever walked away from a meeting or a conversation with me and say, "What is Rahm's position?" I tell you my position whether you ask my position on that issue. And I think in this period of time of anti-politics, authenticity, telling it like it is, and then having a record of having gotten it done, not just talk about it, will stand out in a sea of people. Rahm, as you well know, Jessica, since we've been around, I'm living color. I ain't a shade of gray.
That's true. What about anti Semitism?
Um, I don't know. Look, I have been a target of anti-Semitism. When we were in Japan, people spray painted on my house fence Nazi symbols. To this day, I don't know, but somebody the next day came and knew we were out of the country, cleaned it up. So I've seen the worst, I've seen the best. I got elected in a district that Dan Rostenkowski, Roman Puczynski, Frank Annunzio, Rob Blagojevich, Mike Flanagan, all represented, and along comes Rahm Emanuel. So in a city where ethnic politics are a big deal, went beyond. Same thing in the city of Chicago. Now, did I have people that asked me to produce my birth certificate to prove I could run? Yeah. Did I have
Wow.
people when I was running for mayor try to keep me off the ballot by saying he's not from here, even though I represented a district in the city, and I only reason I left the city was to work for the president of the United States? Yeah. And those charges were led by important people. So I've seen both explicit and implicit anti-Semitism, and I've also seen people see way past it.
Hmm.
Will it be a challenge? It will be novel. It will be new. But I really do, and I don't think nobody would ever say that, well, the Rahm's naive. I have confidence in the people to look at the character.
Mhm.
And I will not run away from, I am Rahm Israel Emanuel, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Um, Sounds like you're running.
Well, I haven't decided. When I figure it out, I'll
This is
let
a
you know.
heavy lean in, is what we say. Let's talk about anti-Semitism for one more beat, more broadly across the country. We are seeing it on the rise on the left, on the right, and on the left. But because you're a Democrat, I'm going to ask you about the Democratic Party. Do you think there is space for Jews who explicitly support Israel in the Democratic Party, support Israel as a Jewish state? And what do you expect from the 28 platform?
Yeah, so two things. You say it's on the rise. I think it's just gone from an implicit to explicit. Anti Semitism has always existed. Always. The only difference is it has a permission slip to be more public than it was before. Before it was not cool. So
Which
that's just
seems to recruit more people into the belief.
okay. This is the answer part to the question part. I
Okay.
get to finish. That's my view. Number two, Jessica, look, nobody's been tougher on the Israeli government than me. Bibi Netanyahu, back in 2009, almost 20 years ago, publicly said I was a self hating Jew. Rahm Israel Emanuel, bar mitzvahed his kid there, been to Israel 15 times. So I think you can be supportive of Israel without having to support the Israeli government's decisions. And you and I are answering this on the anniversary of the killing of Yitzhak Rabin,
Hmm.
who was a prime minister, in my view, while nobody questioned his toughness, his determination for and commitment to the security of the state of Israel, in which he determined that working towards a two-state solution was in Israel's interest. And I think that's true today as it was back in 1994 and 1995 before he was assassinated.
Okay, I'll move on. I do anticipate a platform fight in 28, but we have time to talk
Well,
about that.
great. You can cover it.
I will. I will. I covered the
Okay.
last one. Do you remember that one?
Okay.
Okay. Looking also to 28, both Governor Newsom and Governor Pritzker are emerging as vocal Trump challengers. In your assessment as a political analyst, who is the better candidate and who's more likely to get knocked out in the general?
Yeah, well, look, I think that misses a piece. Between now and 2026, fighting Trump is going to be definitional. After 2026, fighting for America will be definitional.
Hmm.
And if I decide to go, I'm both on education, access to the American dream that's unaffordable. That's the real estate that I'm going to make my claim. I think the American people know in their bones what's going on today means we're not taking care of tomorrow. I think by 2027, 2028, Donald Trump's going to be in the rearview mirror. Showing that you can fight Donald Trump doesn't show me anything of what you can do for America. It shows me that you can oppose him. But I think you need to show that you can do something for the future. I'll give you by
That's
way of
interesting.
example.
Hmm.
I mean, a month ago, the NAEP scores came out and said 2/3 of our kids cannot do reading and math at grade level. Now, you tell me which governor who's responsible has said that's unacceptable. We need an emergency meeting. You know more about President Trump's view on windmills than you do, and he knows about reading and math scores. Now, we are not going from here to there where only 1/3 of our kids are performing and 2/3 are failing. And yet, nobody who's got on his homework assignment in the place of responsibility and is a chief executive of either a state or the country said a peep or a sound. And so to me, I'm just a skinny little Jewish kid with a big mouth. I have been talking about this, and I have not only a record, I have a passion to it.
So you have
And
a
to,
record on education for sure. I also want to ask you, would you handicap Pritzker and Newsom strengths and weaknesses?
no, I won't. That's
Okay.
for you to figure it out. I'm not going to do that. They got their own record. They're all both are friends of mine. I'm not going to do that. That's not fair.
Okay. I'm going to move on to policy because
Okay.
a lot of people don't know this, but you're also a policy wonk. People in Washington do know that. My audience doesn't. I want to make sure they do. Back to your old stomping ground, Chicago and ICE. One of your most famous quotes, whether you actually said it or not, is that we should never let a crisis go to waste. There is now a crisis with ICE in Chicago and
Yeah.
around the country. What more would you like to see elected officials do, not from a political standpoint, but from a policy position to protect residents and take a stand against the essentially
Look,
secret police we're seeing formed?
I mean, somebody sent me today. I'm on the road, so I haven't seen it. I haven't delved past the headline. But they broke into the ICE went into a daycare center. I mean,
Yeah.
so look, Donald Trump, when he ran, talked about dealing with illegal immigrants who broke the law. That was criminal element with felony charges. You had consensus. A block from where Amy and I live, ICE in unmarked cars was waiting outside to pick up parents picking up their kids from school. That is not a crisis in America. That was a parent being a responsible parent. We should uphold that, not make them live in fear. And second is, look, we have a public safety issue. The federal government has a role to play in partnering. Fund 1,000 permanent new police officers and train them in community policing. Fund 30,000 kids in after school programs. Get the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago prosecuting the Latin Kings and gangster disciples. Put those SOBs behind bars.
So call on them to back the rule of law. Fight
no,
this. Yeah.
no. Give them a list of bill of goods. If this is about public safety, here's what we need on public safety. Look, public safety is about putting more police on the beat, getting kids, guns, and gangs off the street. You have a role to play in this. When we created the 100,000 community police officer program, it was helping local law enforcement hire more officers trained in community policing to be on the streets doing community policing. That was a federal government program. When in 1994, when we passed the crime bill, Newt Gingrich accused it for midnight basketball. Well, as a mayor, anybody would tell you, giving the kids a safe place to go in the evening hours is really important to public safety. 3% of the city's population anywhere in the country, big, medium, or small city, creates an overwhelming amount of violence. And they're coming out of gangs. Get them off the streets so those residents can feel free in their own neighborhood. So to me, if you look, we didn't have canisters of gas, tear gas, on the streets being fired not only at residents but at police officers until Donald Trump's ICE and National Guard showed up. That's not public safety. That's disorder. You want public safety? Every superintendent and any mayor worth their salt could give you a bill of goods where the federal government, and I say this, Jessica, just one closing thought. Name me one city where the president or his Justice Department said, what do you need? I mean, you're here on the ground, you're local. What can we do to help you?
No, they don't ask. They do the opposite.
No,
they overrule the governors.
No, it's not just governors. No disrespect to governors. Mayors know a lot more what's going on in their city.
Right.
They can tell you what area is a problem. They can tell you what kids. So you asked me what more they can do.
I want to get
where the bill of goods. Okay,
Okay,
go.
that's good bill of goods.
Okay.
Another crisis, the economy. For sure, we're facing a crisis. You, as chief of staff, helped America come out of the great financial collapse of 2008. Yeah. So when you look around today and see what's happening, not just SNAP benefits, but the other things Americans aren't noticing, the Fed injected $30 billion into the banking system because of liquidity fears. Our economy is being propped up in part by this injection of growth into AI, but not into the Main Street economy. How concerned are you that we are actually unknowingly on the cliff of a possible financial nightmare?
Well, I'm not the person that you got a lot smarter people you can get on that. Here's my view. You have two economies. You have an AI tech-driven economy. That's in your house. That's your dog, not mine.
It is. You can hear it. That's Bruno. Yeah. He's keeping me safe.
You have an AI tech economy booming. You have a consumer economy that is sucking wind and near a recession. And the problem for those in responsible positions, which part of that economy are you looking at? And I believe that the consumer, look, 10% of the country's consumers are holding up 50% of the spend. If you own a home, you own stock, or you own both, you're taking the leather off the ball. If you don't, you are literally trying to get your paycheck to get to the 31st of the month and it stops on the 25th. You're one illness away from Chapter 11. You're stealing money out of your savings account to pay for your kids' daily expenses. And you're behind your bills on auto, homeowner insurance, or etc. It is a real problem out there. And now, if you're doing AI, or you're in the stock market, or you're part of building out data centers, that's boom. The rest of the economy is not part of that. And the president is AWOL. To me, the trick here, invest in the American people's education. Every great period of economic growth has been underpinned and underwritten by a major educational reform. Two, invest in America and America's emerging industries, both through our energy and electricity and distribution, and then restore the funding and build the funding for our major universities in cutting technology from quantum computing to AI to biotech. Pick the fields of tomorrow. That's what China's doing. We're in a challenge here, Jessica, which we've never faced before in 250 years. You have a country like China, 3 times our size, with both the will and the capacity to bury us. And we are operating with a president of the United States who goes to a eulogy and says, I hate my enemies.
Yeah.
Now, that is not getting ready for tomorrow and not making America ready for tomorrow. It may make Donald Trump rich, but it has nothing to do with you getting rich.
I liked how you pivoted from the negative to some solutions. I promise not to go a minute over.
I really appreciate that you like it.
I know, Ram. I'm glad that you're
Okay.
so concerned. I
Yes.
promise not to go over a minute past 11:30, so I'm going to keep my word.
Okay.
Please come back soon. Thanks for your
All
time.
right. Thanks, Jessica. Thank you
Take
so
good
much.
care.